Here's some breaking news, because Jeffrey Epstein may very well still be alive. This is according to some new evidence that was found among the about 3 million pages of documents and videos and photos that was released in the latest Epstein Files drop that took place at the end of January 2026, a few days ago. So in this video, I'm going to show you these documents and tell you why it matters. And then I'm also going to tell you exactly why I think Jeffrey Epstein cannot be dead, and why the government is holding back, and why we won't see any arrests. So let's look at the evidence first. So a little bit of background. Jeffrey Epstein died on the 10th of August 2019 in the Metropolitan Correctional Facility in New York City. His body was found at 6:30 in the morning on August 10th. So he died the evening, late night of August 9th, or the early morning hours of August 10th. And so far, people have speculated whether he was murdered rather than committed suicide, as the official narrative suggests. But the official narrative contains several holes in it, and people questioned the suicide narrative. The design of the cell did not allow anything to be hung inside of it, with low ceiling. The available material in the cell didn't allow somebody to be hung like that. The autopsy report contained conflicting evidence. Then there was the missing security footage. All kinds of things saying and just screaming that suicide was not what happened. So people turned to murder, that he was assassinated, taken out. There was a third option that also made the rounds, but in conspiracy circles, among a bunch of conspiracies, and this is that Epstein is still alive. So a few hours after his body was discovered, there was a post on 4chan. And this post reads like this: "Not saying anything after this. Please do not try to dox me, but last night, after 04:15 count, they took him medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We do not do releases on the weekends unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he's put in a single-man cell and hangs himself. Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we did not record the plate number. And a guy in green dress military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who led him through the gate. You guys, I am shaking right now, but I think they switched him out." Now, a post like this doesn't make anyone bat an eyelid when it appears on 4chan, because 4chan has a lot of weird stuff. A lot of just conspiracy jokes, hoaxes, and all kinds of things appearing there. So without any solid evidence, this anonymous post is meaningless. However, one day later, the U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman of the New York Southern District opened a grand jury proceeding to try to find out who this anonymous poster was. And so they subpoenaed a bunch of companies in succession, going after bank account numbers, credit card numbers, IP addresses, until they tracked down exactly who this person was. And they did identify the person, and his identity, along with his post, is given in the Epstein Files. So here are some of the responses to the subpoena. This is that particular post. And here is another document that they provided as evidence, where the name of the individual is given, Robertogrijalva. So you see his signature here, and this is his name, Robertogrijalva. And then there's this my memo from the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City, from Robertogrijalva to the warden in DIA. And it just mentions some incidents prior to August 10th, but then he ends it with a sentence here that references Epstein. And it says also that inmate Epstein, inmate number 76318-54, will be needing a cellmate upon arrival from his attorney visit. Okay. So what does this prove? This ties this post to an actual employee at that prison at the time of Jeffrey Epstein's death. This is not just a hoax. This is a real person, somebody who worked at that prison at that time. So now we have just a random post turning into a witness statement. Okay? And we have to investigate further. But if this is true, what he says, then this really opens a door to the third theory, that Jeffrey Epstein is still alive. Now, before I continue, let me say that in my opinion, and this is in my mind, I never thought Epstein is dead. And I want to explain to you why I think that. Even without this evidence, it didn't make sense that Epstein could be dead. Let me give you the reasons. Number one, if you are involved in a blackmail operation, a large-scale blackmail operation, either running it or as the point man, working with organizations like the CIA or Mossad or both of them, and you are basically incriminating some of the most powerful, wealthy, influential people in the world, people who can buy armies, people who own armies, people who have connections in places where you don't even know there are places, then you must take precautions to make sure that they're not going to take you out. You don't want to make people that are very powerful nervous about what you know. So there must be security, there must be safety precautions taken. The most infamous is a dead man switch. You know what I'm talking about. If something happens to me, then that information will be released. That's a dead man switch. And secondly, if you are holding evidence against these very powerful elites, then you're not going to store the evidence next to your Disney movies, next to your TV. That's not going to be, or in your basement, or on your plane, or on your boat. It's not going to be there. That evidence must be so far buried and hidden and secure that nobody can touch it. Only Epstein will know where that is. Only he has access to it. And it's probably digital on a server somewhere in a place far away like this, like the Philippines or someplace. But for sure, you're not going to keep it around where you are known to be. As you are jet-setting around the world on your private jet, partying and doing things, somebody might send an army to ransack your island and find the evidence. So evidence is not there. And this would explain why the FBI and the Justice Department has been saying they don't have incriminating evidence. So this may be true. They don't have anything. They have all these documents. They've collected a lot of stuff. I mean, these are hard drives full of stuff, physical documents, and all kinds of things. But there's nothing in there. Sure, there are embarrassing things. There are things that can scar reputations and really hurt powerful people's image, but nothing that can tie them to get arrested for doing something illegal. And I haven't looked at all the Epstein files. I mean, I haven't looked at the videos. I don't know what's in there. But I'm guessing that even though there may be horrific things, there's going to be nothing that can be used to incriminate or to arrest anybody. Number 3, the dead man switch was never triggered. If Epstein had died, this is the key. If Epstein had died, the dead man switch, or a dead man switch, would have been triggered. This means that it would have been known, and there would be incriminating evidence against powerful people coming from different sources, because this would send it out to places domestic and foreign. That didn't happen. So Epstein cannot be dead. But do you say, wait a second, if he's in prison, he cannot trigger the dead man switch. The FBI or somebody in law enforcement nabbed him, and now they can. That couldn't happen anymore. That's not how a dead man switch works. A dead man switch says that the information will be released within a certain time. If any of these things happen, anything happens to me, my plane crashes, I get a heart attack, I commit suicide, something happens to me, I get imprisoned, dead man switch gets triggered, and all this information will be released. Unless Epstein signals to cancel the release of the Epstein files. That's how the dead man switch works. He has to signal the cancellation to not let the trigger proceed. And he had access to phones. He was under house arrest. His story with prison started in 2008. He was incarcerated for 13 months in 2008. So he is familiar with prison. He's prepared for that. He is prepared for somebody trying to kidnap him to torture him, to find that evidence. He's prepared for the law enforcement catching him and arresting him. He's prepared for anything happening. The dead man switch was not triggered. Epstein was alive to cancel that. Okay? So, why is the government not releasing anything? Because the files that they have do not contain the real incriminating evidence. Now, I'm in favor of the death penalty for pedophiles, but honestly, I do not believe that the Justice Department has anything. This does not mean that the government or anybody, that nobody has it. The most likely scenario is that somebody in the government, maybe the CIA, maybe another entity in the government, set up the switch. Body switched him, set it up so that he could be smuggled out of the prison alive and taken out of the country to a safe haven, maybe Israel. Why would they want to do that? Well, first of all, he has made very, very powerful people very nervous. And I think we are underestimating the significance of the Epstein files. I think a lot of things in the news that we are seeing that's making news headlines everywhere has to do with the Epstein files. It's distracting people from the Epstein files. You don't want people like Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for the release of the Epstein Files and constantly calling for the Epstein investigations to continue. So there are a lot of distractions, I think, happening because very serious, very powerful people are nervous about it. When nervous people are very powerful, they can do things, they can do really damaging things. And so there are serious consequences if one of them decide to take out Epstein or decide to capture him or something like that. Or if something happens to Epstein while he's in prison. Also, these people would not want him to show up in a court of law to get cross-examined. But there may be a lot of reasons, other reasons why the government, somebody in the government decided it's better for Epstein to be publicly declared dead. It doesn't matter whether it's suicide or murder, as long as everybody believes that he's dead. Because that means that the threat, since the dead man switch did not trigger, that the threat is over. Another thing to consider is that should those incriminating evidence actually be released? I mean, you're talking about some of the most powerful people in business, some of the most powerful people in politics, presidents. You're talking about celebrities, powerful voices, powerful images of America. People in international circles. These are not just, they transcend boundaries. What would happen if all of them suddenly became known as pedophiles themselves? Not just associating with a pedophile, because that's what's been tarnishing reputations, is the fact that people continue to associate with Epstein after he was officially declared a sex offender. Well, if that were to happen, if powerful people like that en masse were being indicted and arrested and served justice for sex offenses, and horrible sex offenses, including with children, it would harm the United States tremendously. It would harm it economically, internationally. Diplomacy would be affected. World leaders would look at the United States differently. And more importantly, I think somebody from the government looks at it and says that the US population would lose complete trust in their leaders and in the elites. And so, if you are somebody who looks at the bigger picture, then it's likely that somebody there decided that it's better to officially and publicly eliminate Epstein somehow and take him out of the equation, that he's dead. But technically and practically, he's still alive. To me, that's just a logical conclusion. I can't prove it. I don't have any evidence for it. This is the first time I've seen something like this that sort of supports my theory. Now, there are some issues with the evidence that we see here. Number one, if you look at this document, I want you to pay attention to the times. 4chan is a US company. This post appeared on 4chan at 2:45 p.m. on the 10th of August, the day that Epstein's body was recovered. That was a Saturday. At 9:26 a.m., the 10th of August, it was retweeted on Twitter. Okay? At 9:26 a.m. So it was retweeted, 5 hours before this time, before it was originally posted. This means that this time here must be from a server somewhere in Europe or someplace, or in a different time zone ahead of ours, east of the United States, for this to happen, for this time to appear here and for this time to appear here. This is probably a VPN server, a service that was used. Could be, I don't know. But this needs to be explained, is how these times and what the time zone differences and locations are here. The next issue I want to point out for you is on this one. There were several posts on 10th of August, from 8:16 to 8:47. And then this post, which is exactly the previous one, it's exactly this wording that shows up here, was cleared on, this is a response to a subpoena, by the way, the 10th of August at 9:46 Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, 9:46 Eastern Daylight Time, this post was cleared. What does cleared mean? I don't know, but it means it was probably cleared for release, to be publicized. How come that date is even later, or, yeah, it's even later than this? Okay, so now we're going back in time. Maybe this was Pacific time or something. All right, again, time zones matter. And then thirdly, look at this signature over here. Look at the R. The O looks like an X. It's just it's the B, the F, or the T, the G, the J, the L, the V. Is this the same signature? Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say it's the same signature. They don't look the same. Now again, it's meaningless, because these days with electronic signatures and things that show up on paper could be very different from a hand signature on paper. I know my own signature when I sit at a desk is very different from compared to when I sign with my finger or with a stylus. So it could be, but this is unrecognizable compared to this. There's no corresponding traits. And then fourthly, the worst of all of them is this. Let's read the sentence again. Also, that inmate Epstein, number so-and-so, will be needing a cellmate upon arrival from his attorney visit. He's coming back from his attorney. When was this memo sent? August 12, 2019. 2 days after his body was discovered. Well. So this memorandum has problems too. Why was this memorandum 2 days later indicating that Epstein was alive by the prison mate that posts that he was switched 2 days before? Is there a mistake? Did somebody make a mistake with the date? Is this a joke? Is this document a hoax? What is going on? Okay, so there are a lot of questions about this evidence. But the Epstein Files are significant. Do not underestimate the Epstein Files. Remember that there are very, very powerful people in the world who are very nervous, who are having sleepless nights about incriminating evidence that may be found or may be released against them, with incriminating video material, pictures, documents. And these people are not, they care about their image, they care about their reputations, they care about what people think of them. and they definitely don't want to give up their freedoms. They'd rather let you give up your freedom, but not them. So I don't think this is just a two-tier justice system. It's far worse than that. It's far worse than that. Somebody in the government has Epstein somewhere, and perhaps they already have access to that documentation. Perhaps the government does have it, but they just don't want to release it. Look, suppose that suppose that some of these people who are in high places, very powerful people, not government, suppose some of them got a hold of Epstein. Where would he be today? He'd be dead. He would have been in a dungeon somewhere, being tortured to get to that incriminating evidence. But he was prepared for that event. He was prepared for it. There would have been a dead man's switch. And he would make a phone call to somebody and say, from prison, he would use a collect call. He'd make a phone call. He'd dial an extra few digits. That's a code. Or he'd call somebody and use a keyword. They talk about the weather. And he'd say something like, "Oh, that reminds me of something Pops used to say." And the keyword is Pops. Cancel the dead man switch. And then the person that he called would use another technique to signal somebody else. And they don't know what they are signaling, they're just signaling. It's what they were told and paid to do. It's very untraceable. Something like this can be set up so that nobody can find it and trace it. So, no, he had precautions. He was smart, and he was not going to let his evidence lie around, and he was going to take security precautions. I cannot see how Jeffrey Epstein can be dead. And if you look at the evidence of interviews that he had in 2019 prior to his alleged death, he didn't seem like somebody who was depressed or somebody who was ready to commit suicide. He, frankly, on the other hand, he looked like somebody who was kind of enjoying the attention. He looked like somebody who was seeing this as a game that he's playing. I mean, this is a monster. And the people who associated with him, I believe, are also monsters. Once you know somebody is a sexual predator, why would you keep associating with him? A sexual predator of young women, young children. What is going on? So yes, all of us would like to see justice done to such people. I'm just giving you my analysis that I don't think that's going to happen and why. And what I think is probably a possible scenario. I don't have the proof. This is just a logical deduction. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it. If you'll care to share it in the comments, I'd like to read that and I'll respond to you. Thanks for watching. Truth Matters Unplugged.